one of the most famous medevacs out there that a lot of people know about is from Drang, early in Vietnam in 1965. Anybody that saw the movie We Were Soldiers takes place there. Now, interestingly enough, when I first was looking at this story, like, I knew one guy. I knew Ed Freeman. Once I was speaking with you, you said Bruce Crandall. And I'm like, who's this guy? Okay, let me look him up. Well, I didn't know that they were working together.
Right. You get the CO and the XO of the air assets for that battalion.
Major Bruce Crandall, nickname, call sign Snake Shit. Snake or Snake Shit.
And that's because?
Yep, because he flew lower than Snake Shit.
Dude, I love that. So if you just had the name Snake or Snake Shit, like, you'd be like, that's kind of a weird call sign, you know? But then you know the context behind it. Oh, it's because he flies lower than Snake Shit. You're like, now that's a sick call sign.
Yeah.
Right?
That dude's awesome.
Just hugging the ground.
He actually, by the time he gets to Vietnam, he's an experienced pilot. He was drafted in 1953, learned how to fly helicopters in flight school. By 1964, he was an experienced pilot developing helicopter assault techniques. So he's not a medevac pilot. He's doing other stuff. And arriving in Vietnam in 65, by the end of October, the NVA had come out of Cambodia and really engaged with American forces for the first time in the war on a large scale battle. So the command was like, well, we gotta get them before they get back into Cambodia. So by November 14th, 1965, Crandall and Bruce Crandall and Ed Freeman, they're going to lead the first major division-sized operation in Vietnam, and they're going to take these guys and land all of them into LZ X-ray, which begins the Battle of Ia Drang. So the way they do it is it's a two 8 ships formation. So 8 ships in the front, 8 Hueys, and 8 more Hueys on the second stick. And I'll call them sticks because the first stick of 8, second stick of 8, Ed Freeman's leading the second stick there. Artie softens up the target for about 12 minutes. When that last round hits, these guys are coming in, landing combat troops in the combat zone. And first few drops in, perfectly fine. No, non-issue. On the fourth lift in, the second group of 8 received some incoming rounds. One of the ships had been hit so bad, but by the time they made it back, it had to be grounded. So now it's starting to pick up. On the fifth lift in, Snake, he's leading the first 8 aircraft, and he catches insane incoming rounds. The guys on his Huey, as they're touching down, as soon as they jump off the bird, they're getting shot, immediately wounded.
Ugh.
It makes me think of like D-Day, but with helicopters.
Right, just worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. Like, they're just taking it as soon as they get there. His crew chief is shot in the neck. His lieutenant was shot in the back of the head. Now they got to pull out, obviously, and close the landing zone because it's now beyond what is reasonable to get in here.
It's not even a hot LZ at this point. It's just hot.
Yeah, just severely. And so Ed Freeman, he's in that second stick, the guy that I knew about before this. His call sign is Too Tall because he went in service earlier too, but prior to it, at 6'4", he was unable to be a pilot. He was too tall.
He was too tall.
They changed that though in 1955, and then he went to flight school. So by the time he gets to Vietnam, he's also a very experienced pilot. By about 10 years there. By that fifth lift in, I was saying they're now closing. The first stick goes in. They're now closing the landing zone. Well, Ed Freeman, he goes in, lands his guys, and immediately on his helicopter, including himself, all 4 of them are immediately wounded as soon as they touch down. They're dropping these guys in. Pop, pop, pop. They're all wounded. Crazy stuff. But anyway, it's a 14-hour day for these guys. Back and forth flights from this to LZ X-ray, back to this, trying to get more troops. But once the lifts ended, once there's no more lifts going in, Crandall and Ed Freeman, they decided to stick around. They're like, well, nobody's allowed in here, but let me keep eyes on. So the flight from where they were coming from was 7 minutes in and 7 minutes out. So they start doing resupplies, but Bruce Crandall, he's like, this is taking way too long. So while he's doing this, while he makes a run over there, picks up ammo and supplies, brings it back, picks up the wounded, goes back, he's coordinating over the radio, hey, the Fire Base Falcon, there's a Special Forces base closer by. So he gets the Chinooks to resupply the base there.
And that's where he starts picking up resupplies from, cutting some time off that trip.
Yeah, because he's realizing now, like, I'm not only doing resupplies, I'm doing medevacs too. So he's coordinating all this stuff from the air. He gets into the area. He's speaking on the hook with Hal Moore, the lieutenant colonel.
Yep, lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, famous guy.
Mel Gibson in the movie.
Yeah, Mel Gibson in the movie. He's speaking directly with him. Hey, coming in for more resupplies. And he radios, sure, I got you. Come on in, right? Well, they come in, and of course, they still take incoming rounds. And they just keep doing this. At one point, they get back to Firebase Falcon, and he sees 2 medevac choppers sitting there. He's like, hey, you guys, follow me. Because his crew, of course, everybody knows like first aid and stuff. But
right. They're not trained, though.
They're not trained like these guys are. So he says, follow me, land exactly where I do, how I do it. So Snake, he goes in, lands, drops off his resupply, picks up wounded, pulls out. And the way he described the first medevac helicopter coming in was they came in a little bit too high. And this is not to knock medevac pilots or anything.
They haven't been flying with this. They haven't been flying with snake shit. They don't know how low to. They don't know the name of the game yet.
Right. And these could be brand new guys too, like without 10 years of experience in flight. So these guys come in, one lands, picks up 2 wounded. The other medevac was trying to come in, took rounds up in the air. Those medevacs got 2 wounded off the ground, brought them wherever they brought them, and never came back.
Naturally, that was enough.
Yeah, one's enough. And so it's up to Ed Freeman, it's up to Snake Shit and Too Tall to take care of these guys. So they're going to do this well into the night. Like, they're just doing this over and over and over again until they can get more supplies in and more wounded out well into the night. Now, after his 22nd flight, their 22nd flight, Crandall and Freeman, they had evacuated more than 70 wounded and ensured the entire survival of that battalion.
That's crazy.
Like, just those guys and their crew. Because had it not been for them continuously resupplying them...
Yeah, the guys would have ran out of ammo, water. Listen, I can't stress enough how important water becomes in the middle of a gunfight, dude. You run out of water, that is a bad day. That's a bad day.
Very, very, very bad.
And then ammo is obvious. That you don't have to explain that. You run out of ammo, you're out of the fight.
Yeah.
In a modern war, that's not going to work. As they used to say, that dog just won't hunt.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting also about what these guys are doing and how they're doing it for so long is the birds never shut down. So this method is called hot refueling. So when they come in with the wounded, they get the wounded off the bird, and they're loading up all this ammunition. The pilot stays on the stick, doesn't shut down. The crew gets out, hits the bathroom, refueling the bird while it's still running, all get back in, and then bounce.
That's crazy.
These birds, if never shut off, they could be on for 14 hours and just keep going nonstop. Now the Hueys, they fueled up. They had a maximum of 220 gallons, but they burn about 90 gallons an hour, and that gave them roughly 2.5 hours of flight time.
If they're lucky.
Yeah. By the time I've read things from Vietnam vets saying, like, at 2.5 hours, you're on fumes. You should have been the warning light. There's supposed to be a 20-minute warning light that never worked, I guess. So they would just have to eyeball it and fly on fumes. It was crazy how these guys just did it.
Man, nuts, dude.
Now, he had a quote here. This is Bruce Crandall. He said, "It was the longest day I ever experienced in any aircraft."
I could imagine, man. What time did you say he started?
Yeah, actually, they started 6 a.m. and they didn't finish until 10:30 p.m.
Dude.
And
you're flying in and out of Drang.
Yeah, the whole time.
Good gosh, man. That's nuts.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. And but of course, he wasn't in one aircraft the whole time. He had multiple Hueys because you come out and it's like, this one's busted.
Looks like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, I need a new one now. And so, there's a lot of that. And had it not been for Bruce and Ed's decision to continue to fly into the Hot Ozzy, like I said before, so many more lives
the end of the day.
would have been lost. Yeah. But they did incredible stuff. And now they both at the time had received, or after that time had received, awards like Distinguished Flying Cross or something like that, which wasn't upgraded or updated until now.
Right.
So actually, President George W. Bush awarded Ed Too Tall Freeman, the Medal of Honor in July of 2001. And then Bruce Snakeshit Crandall, he received his in February of 2007.
Good for them, man. Them guys deserve it.
So many years later.
Those guys deserve it. That's just nuts, man.
Yeah, so, it's not always, medevacs are so important, but it's not always a medevac that's coming to get you.
Yeah.
It could be an Apache, or it could be Bruce and Ed.
Right. And that's what it boils down to, because it's a team effort in war, right? Like,
absolutely.
Everybody's got to contribute. That's why you talk to anybody that's actually been in combat, they usually don't have very much negative to say about jobs that aren't infantry. You know what I mean? Like, now before you go into combat, it's like, pogue this or pogue that.
Yeah.
Man, when you've been there and done it, though, it's a different story. You realize how vital every role is,
Every role.
Even motor T.
Yep.
Very
well
You get so
said.
mad at motor T when you're in training, but, even in combat, they even play a very vital role as well. So
yeah.
it's it is a team effort, and everybody there is sacrificing one way or another, and they're all there for the same goal. And man, when lives are on the line and it's your fellow countrymen, you'll be surprised, the levels of motivation and the commitment that it'll pull out of people.
Yep. And they don't even know each other, or maybe never will know each other.
Yeah.
But I want to finish here with a message from Bruce Crandall. His message that he used to say, long after the war. I want to repeat it here, and it goes like this, quote, "I want to spread about heroism and the Medal of Honor that even if you don't enter military service, you still have a responsibility for service, responsibility for the country, and to be a good citizen and offer help where it is needed."